Oh man. Hey people, what's going on? Just checking in and gonna do some live drawing. I've got this portrait I've been working on for I don't know a little while now, and I thought it's a good time to do a live stream. What with the finally, by the way, the release of the Atelier tier. Just made some posts about that on Patreon. So if you're kind of curious as to what's going on with the Atelier tier, the post has just gone up. It's a public post. So even if you're not subscribed, you can still check it out and see what it's all about. Um, if anybody watching on YouTube right now would feel comfortable letting me know that the audio was okay, I would be really, really excited about that. And just chuck your questions into the comments, and I'll kind of get to them as soon as possible. Yeah, and I'm just checking the health of all the streams. Everything seems to be going all right. Yeah, I just got work to do. I just gotta. This is one of those projects where I'm kind of pushing myself a little bit more. To get to maybe a kind of interesting place artistically speaking. Um, trying to get a little bit more expression, out of this, and a little bit more. Obviously, like I've included, you can't see it, but like down here, there's like it's a long kind of like vertical composition, and so there's a lot more like kind of drawing to do than when you just have just like a head to study or something. I'm kind of making a whole composition out of this. Right, yeah. So everybody seems to be telling me that the audio is doing great. And now that everybody's kind of chiming in on YouTube and checking it out, if you have a question, just let me know what's going on and I will get to that question ASAP. Let's see. The one question that should always be there is, what paper do you prefer? Uh, Usually I would refer you to my FAQs on Patreon, but I'll tell you, I'll tell you exactly what I prefer. I like Stonehenge paper. This is a white Stonehenge, and it's actually adhered to a hardboard panel with an archival adhesive by a company called Raymar Art Panels. And I think that right now, they're the people that are probably doing the best that I've seen in terms of like producing like art surfaces for artists who want to draw. So that's where I would go to for paper. Let's see. A lot of questions coming in. Kylo is asking, how many hours a day should you draw to get really good within a few months? To get really good within a few months, you should probably draw for about 24 hours a day, if possible. Um, it took me, I'll just say, I studied actually for 4 years. Um, and I would say that probably for the first few years, I don't think that I was really good. I mean, I had a lot of potential, but potential's funny that way where you can have potential for like a really long time before you start to think like, well, is it potential or is it not? Like, if you're not kind of producing, I had these questions too, when I was studying. It was kind of like, when's this potential gonna like arrive as as something that's like useful from a kind of career perspective. And I think that showed up a lot later than I would have hoped. Now, I mean, some of that is also like your own perception of your work as well. And I had this like really kind of critical feeling about my own work. And so, I mean, maybe after a couple years I could kind of produce something pretty good, but if you asked me, I would have said like, no, I don't think I did anything good for for the first few years. So to get really good in a few months, I think probably I don't really think there's a program for that. Although it's funny, you see all of these since the pandemic, like all of these companies like sprout up seemingly like daily that are hosting like online lessons and stuff. And I'm sure a lot of them are really, really great, but some of them, they like to like promise the moon, like they promise you everything. Learn the secrets. to Portraiture in this one online course. And it's like, yeah, come on, one online course. Anyway, sorry, that's me being salty. That's terrible. I feel terrible about that. I take it all back. They're all great programs. Zach Fitzgerald says, since you both live in New York, do you have any experience with Casey Bao? What do you think of his work? I used to live in Jersey City, which is just across the river from Manhattan, and now I live in Norway. So just a brief correction of the of my location there. But yeah, we moved here last July, so that's when we left. I met Casey a couple times when I was there, and he always seemed like a really nice guy. It's like you just meet at like openings and stuff though, so it's like in those situations, like honestly, nobody really like has like conversations at openings and stuff. It's all just like, oh yeah, hey, how's it going? And then you're kind of like on to the next group of people and stuff. So yeah, he seemed nice, when I met him. So yeah, nothing but nice stuff to say about Casey. I think his work is obviously like really, really strong. He's got incredible vision, and he's got like the skills and the means to like kind of execute that. So like, I mean, for you kids out there that looking to be a professional artist, there's not a whole lot of other artists out there that are maybe a better case study than Casey. No pun intended there. uh, Tokaria says, I'm 38 years old, been teaching myself how to draw since August 2019. Learned about you from Proko's podcast. Very taken by your work. I look forward to one day becoming a skilled draftsman. Hey, that's great. It's of all of the kind of collaborations that I've had and like, companies and people and things that have been in touch to like do stuff together, Stan Prokopenko is probably the one that really I had the best time with. Like, as an artist, you encounter like a lot of different, how do I want to put this? A lot of different companies, like eventually when you're quite visible, they get in touch and they want to do stuff. And a lot of them, kind of come to you like with smiles, and then they deliver you these contracts that are, unconscionable. And, I can say that like with Stan, like he's never been anything but like so like helpful and generous, like more than you think he should be. Like he's got to be like a really busy guy, but like, all the stuff that I do like professionally, like all the cameras that I use, all the editing stuff that I do, like all this stuff is things that he like helped me out to like understand how to use it, what to do with it, where to get it, so just like amazing, like generous guy. I can't say enough like how much I've appreciated like being able to work with him and talk with him in the past. And if you don't know him, which would be shocking, since he's like got like 2 million followers on YouTube. If you don't know Stan, go check out his channel or his podcast, the Draftsman podcast, and just kind of get to know him, because if you're into like online education, he's I think for a lot of years now he's kind of been the standard. Marianne says, hello Stephen, would you be able to talk about how to approach a gallery, how to go from making art pieces and becoming a professional artist per se? Yeah, Marianne, it's a cool question. I mean, the prerequisite obviously is that you have to, I think, have developed, I mean, we're going to get into like a little bit like the style question, right? Like galleries want an artist that has arrived, right? They are money-making enterprises, and in my experience, which by the way, I mean, I want to be fair to them too. Like I started working with a couple galleries really early on in my career when I was still a student. And credit to them that they kind of like stuck with me and like wanted to show my work when I was a student, and where I think my work was like still really inconsistent. I had like flashes where, there would be good stuff, and then that was a profitable relationship for us. In general though, like it's been my experience that like galleries kind of want an artist that's already doing their thing. I mean, because, and nowadays especially, like this is really important. Like if you've already built an audience, I think that you're like really, really attractive to a gallery. So I think for a lot of artists, my recommendation is really to, you can't start building an audience soon enough, especially with just where everything is at today. Like, I'll tell you, every show and connection that I've made over the last 5 years, in one way or another, has been like connected to social media. So like that's where galleries get in touch with me. That's where other artists that are curating shows get in touch. That's why they get in touch, is that they know me and my work from Instagram. And so it's kind of like this really different landscape right now. Whereas I think, and you'll get this really funny advice too. Like artists will be like, "Oh, be careful about like exposing yourself on social media and your work because like maybe people get tired of you or bored of your work, or you'll be like, the population be like oversaturated with what you do." Without like wanting to say like straight off like that's just not true. Like I've never had any experience like that. Um, I've found that actually nothing but like good things have come out of like building a solid audience on Instagram. Most of the what I do professionally, like I said, can be kind of traced back to that in one way or another. So, I guess the across the board advice that I would give, without hopefully digressing maybe too far, the across the board advice that I would give is, you know, start building an audience even when you're still kind of like trying to figure it all out, because like eventually those are going to be the people that actually kind of know the most about your work, and they're following it most like closely, I mean, I think in general when people are talking about like making a living through artwork, we're talking about um, storytelling in a way. Like why would somebody be like super interested in your work? Because they know something about it. Like they have learned something about it. Like in my case, I would say that people are in general interested in my work because the people that follow me are really interested in portraiture and like learning about portraiture. And I think at that point, I used to get asked, as every like just portrait painter probably does at some point in their career, like why would I want to have a portrait of somebody I don't know? Like why would I want to buy that, and hang that in my house? Well, like if you know about the form of art that is portraiture, like that question just doesn't exist. Like I haven't been asked that question in years because like most of the people that I interact with, again, like they found me, and they found me because of portraiture and because they have a passion and a love for portraiture, and or they have like come to me wanting to know about portraiture, and they've kind of learned about it, through me and my page and stuff. So it's like you're like building kind of a relationship, and I feel like that's really such an important thing. Now later on, like if you really really want to work with galleries, I would say, by the way, you should consider also just going it alone, doing it yourself, because frankly, you know, every business has got to run the way it's got to run, and galleries got to charge what they got to charge. But the commission that you're going to pay to the gallery for moving your work is going to be a lot, and so you got to think about whether or not you might be able to kind of do it yourself better. And I think that's something that a lot of artists are kind of looking at right now, and a lot of artists are doing right now. But like I said, if you want to work with a gallery, it doesn't hurt actually to already be like a viable professional. And then a lot of times they can find you. Now there also used to be this thing that would go around artist circles, and I always love, or I don't love, but I always find it funny. Like there's these like advices, or these like kind of thought clouds that kind of go around the artist community, that like you shouldn't approach galleries. Galleries don't want to be approached because and if you do, like they might just reject you just because you approach them. Like I don't know. There's all these like fears. I mean, maybe you haven't heard that. I feel like I heard that when I was kind of a young professional, kind of growing up, and so for years I didn't do that. I think a lot of galleries maybe used to work that way. I can remember in particular, like there was one gallery that whose name I won't say, but I had approached them with my work. Like I just emailed them and said like, hey, I've been looking at the work in your gallery, and I think in a lot of ways, aesthetically, like there's a fit, there's a match in between there. Maybe we can do something together. Maybe that would be interesting. And I didn't hear anything back from them at all about that. And I happened to know somebody that was like showing in that gallery, and I said, hey, it was a good friend of mine. I said, hey, I wanted to get in touch with these people, and I tried. I didn't hear anything back. Like, could you just like nudge them, just say like, oh yeah, I know this guy. He's a good painter. Maybe you should check out his work or whatever. And so he talked to the gallerist, and I sent that same email again, and like the gallery like got back to me right away, like just in a minute, like they got back to me. So I don't know. I mean, maybe some galleries are still kind of old school, but I also know since then, like other galleries that I've wanted to work with, and this is by the way, after I kind of built my own following, I've reached out to galleries and right away they're like, yeah, let's do something. Send me some work. What do you have available? So I think that you can kind of develop your own work. You obviously have to build up your skill a lot if you're going to go out kind of approaching galleries. But I think once you've done that and once you've built up an audience, I think anything's kind of fair game. Like you shouldn't feel like you have to be like shy about getting in touch with them. But it's always you should always remember that like they're people too, and it is like kind of relationship building. So like don't go in too heavy, too fast. I think sometimes like people have already like developed this like narrative in their head of like how it's gonna go, and so they like go in red hot wanting to talk to this gallery like let's do something. I want a solo show or whatever, and it's like hey whoa like we just met. So just be conscious of that as well. I hope that some of that's helpful. Like I said, I mean, it just kind of depends person to person, and you also kind of have to have the work to back it up. But in terms of what to do, just start building that audience for sure. So a lot of questions came in, and I tend to digress when answering questions. So um, MJ says, and this is really actually a good one. It's more of a statement than a question, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. The more I study your videos, the more I think that we are essentially just drawing with concepts. This is so true. It's why you can take graphite pencils, or you can take charcoal, or you can take gouache, or whatever it is. You can make the same portrait of it. It's light and shadow, it's impression, it's line quality, it's edge quality. All these things. It's just a different material to express them. Let's see. MJ is asking now, what are your thoughts on unified planes of value or value organization? Is it necessary for it to be unified? No, no. I mean, as a teacher, right, you get into a situation sometimes where you can give good advice that also students should understand that eventually has a little bit softer boundaries, right? Like so when a teacher says something to a student, and I can recall this from my student days. I mean, even let's take something as simple as keep your light shade unified. Well, when I heard that as a student, I was like, wait, what? Keep my shadow or keep my light shape unified. I'm going to keep my light shape 100% unified. I'm going to unify my light shape completely, and eventually I kind of did it just like way too much, and I understood later, oh, they meant keep it like mostly unified. Right? It's like take that advice with like good kind of soft edges. And I think that's really the idea. I mean, you can go out there and look at artists who are making great portraits where the planes are like all kinds of crazy, but they're using like other things to kind of you know garner or gather that sense of form in their work. So let's see. Rohan uh, Thanker is asking, do you apply pressure on the pencil while sketching? How to build up dark value in a 3 to 4 hour sketch? Wow, if it's a 3 to 4 hour sketch and you got to build up value, I would say that start sooner rather than later. Like just start the sketch with your 6B pencils because you're gonna have to be there pretty fast, especially if it's graphite. If you're drawing with, say, let's say you're drawing with like charcoal or something, I think that probably that's not really that hard of a question. It's just just get your soft charcoal and press hard on it. With graphite, I just would wonder, do you have to build up your value in a sketch? Like usually when I do a sketch, the thing that I leave out actually is the really dark values. I just try to find a different solution to it so that I don't have to kind of force the medium to do what it doesn't want to do. And this is like maybe something interesting to kind of take home about this, Rohan, is that different materials kind of naturally lend themselves to different effects. So, like, why do I choose graphite? Well, I choose graphite because it really lends itself to like close and tight control over shapes. Like what you see me doing right now, graphite loves to do that. Graphite doesn't necessarily like to get really rich and dark really fast. So I would suggest maybe just rethink those priorities of like what you want to do in a quick sketch. Let's see. Lemo Art says, "Can you please make a Charles Barg drawing stream?" Guess what? May 1st, the Atelier tier is actually sorry, May 3rd. The Atelier tier is kicking off with my first live Barg drawing workshop. So we're gonna go through the Psyche of Napoli, which is a Barg of a really beautiful classical Greek sculpture. And it's going to be a 2.5 hour live demo lecture, starting that out. And then everybody's going to get that source image and be able to kind of work along with me, but then also work until like the 15th of the month, right? Where I'm going to put in kind of a deadline for submissions. Now, once those drawings are submitted in the community section of my Patreon page, I'm going to select like 5 or 6 drawings that I think show the best version of the kinds of concepts that people are struggling with or confronting in this Barg. Then I'm going to do a live critique video. So I'm going to be talking about the drawings, what to fix, what to change, how to work on them, what concepts to think about, what's missing, what needs to be added, all that kind of stuff. And you can all, of course, as Patreon subscribers, you can ask questions during that feedback session. So I think that live critique is going to be huge. I think that's going to be really critical for a lot of people in terms of getting to a mass audience, a concept of feedback. And then those videos, of course, are going to be made available to watch afterwards. So you'll be able to watch the live critique video. You'll be able to watch the live demo video. And also there's going to be, of course, like lesson plans and things that kind of come with it. So you can kind of cross-reference this to the lesson notes to make sure that you're kind of grabbing a hold of all the information that is available there. So the Atelier tier, like I said, it started, it's out, all the information is on Patreon. Please go check it out because that's exactly what you're asking about. Another dude says, "Good morning. I just joined your Patreon and saw you were going to do a Sargent study. I really loved it. Thank you. Awesome." Fortune says, "Can you explain your process for adding color into your mainly graphite works?" Yeah, so I used to for a while. I was working with a lot of like raw pigments, like raw like unbound ultramarine blue and unbound yellow ochre. And what that means is basically it's like charcoal dust or graphite dust. It's just these like particles that you can rub on the paper and it'll kind of create an effect of color. So I used to like rub into the shadows at an early stage. Like I would rub some yellow ochre. I'd take like my stump and like dip it in the yellow ochre and kind of rub it through. And the background, sometimes I would paint like an aqueous dispersion like you see here. Or actually you can't see that. Like you see here, I would like paint the ultramarine blue onto the paper, which again, it's just powder. So, it doesn't damage anything. And then I could like erase it away and manipulate it and stuff. So that was my kind of process for adding color. Lately, I've been thinking, and there's been something with these Raymar panels, right? Because if some of you like watch the other streams, you'll see like I can like paint washes onto this, and it doesn't affect the paper at all. Like the paper stays totally flat because it's like adhered with this film to the panel. I've been thinking of like kind of painting my backgrounds with like watercolor, like so I could engage with like a color, like a deep teal color or something. Like so instead of being like just dark graphite, it would be like a deep teal coloration. I think that'd be really kind of cool. So that's maybe something I'll experiment with in the future. Varun Tulsian says, "Hey Stephen, did you start out being a full-time artist, or did you have multiple jobs before transitioning? How many years did it take to make it? I want art to be my profession, but it's so scary." Hey, Varun, I got to tell you, it is scary. I think for years. All right. Well, so to answer your question, strictly speaking, um, ever since I went to college for a couple of years in the States, and it was an art college. And during that time, I waited tables, and actually for a little while, uh, um, for a little while, for my first, I think, year of college, I worked at Subway. So in this tiny town in North Florida, I would go to school all day and be in the studio like painting and working and so on. And then at night, I would go and work like the night shift at these Subway restaurants. One of them was in like this really kind of very unpleasant neighborhood in this small town in North Florida. And if you're asking, have I ever heard the joke? Oh, so you were a sandwich artist? Yes, I've heard that one. No, I'm just kidding. But like everybody used to say that, so it's just like it rings in my ears when I think of my jobs of the past. So then I waited tables there, but then so after that, like I just kind of left, and I was just like, I'm gonna be an artist one way or the other, and so I left, and I was like really poor, and like lived in my studio for maybe a couple of years. Um, and then when I was 24, I went to Florence to study. Don't ask me how I got the money to do it, but I worked and saved and got some family help and like did everything I could do. And I finally got there and I studied for about 4 years. Ever since then, I've either like worked for myself or for the academy. So right out of school, I was hired as an instructor there, and for the next let's see, for the next 12 years, I was a principal instructor at the academy, and for 5 of those years, I was the director of anatomy, first in Sweden and then in Jersey City when the Jersey City branch existed. It no longer exists. Um, if I was going to like give advice to people about like kind of becoming a professional in in the in representational art in that field in that genre, I would say to you, focus on learning the hard skills in drawing and painting. So, learning about color theory, learning about anatomy, learning about drawing. These are things that, in a way, are like highly kind of translatable in terms of like all the different kind of places you can go with those. Because basically, every artist, teaches, or every representational artist that I know, one way or another, teaches a bit. Some are only a little bit. Some, like myself, taught for many, many, many years at different institutions and things. Um, but I think it's kind of just a generally like accepted practice that, if you're a representational artist, then you probably have some understanding that you can pass on to others. And I think that's a great place to kind of start out, because it kind of you need that capital, right, to kind of figure out how to do this stuff. Um, no, so yeah, no, I didn't really have jobs. I didn't really have transitioning jobs so much. I guess that was your question. I was just kind of always involved with the Florence Academy, and then when I left the Florence Academy, by that time I had already like started my website, and I'd been running my Patreon page for uh, not a couple of years, but almost a couple of years by that point. So I was already like effectively self-employed by the time I left there. Um, but the thing is, you gotta be. I think you ought to be creative about it, because no two kind of art careers look the same. I mean, what worked for me, listen, it might not be the thing that works for you. Just like, you might find some way that never would have worked for me as well. So, just accept that they're all snowflakes. Like they're all gonna look totally different, and you shouldn't expect that someone else's path is going to be the one that kind of works for you as well. I think that there's some commonalities, and I think there's some new opportunities today that I highly advise. Which I was just saying to somebody earlier when they were asking, you know, it's never too soon to start building your audience. Even as a student, you have like a story to tell. Which, by the way, let's talk about like building an audience. Also, building an audience doesn't mean like just showing the world that you're super cool. Um, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe some people build audiences that way. But I find that more often than not, like people want to watch a live stream because they want to learn something from it. They want to follow an account on Instagram because they want to be inspired by it, or they want to learn something from it. Like so, once you start thinking about it, like what can you offer to the world? Like what can you offer that would make someone want to follow you? I think then you have something to work with. Let's see. So I'm just looking for some questions here. MJ is asking, can you explain how you make an even value when the movements or strokes that you use? It's all about pressure. It's all about the evenness of the pressure. When you're looking at the tip of the pencil, what you miss is down here. That my finger is always like kind of planted on the paper, so that like I'm able to be as light as possible with the tip of the pencil. Right? There's hardly any pressure there whatsoever. If I wanted there to be, there would be too, but it's a matter of controlling that pressure. Let's see. Shuvo Arts is asking, please give me some small tips on what to do if you want to draw like me. I think you mean that if you want to draw like me. He says I'm a big fan. Um, I think that you know one of the things that I could say if you want to kind of get to this level of drawing and hey, just full disclosure, like I draw pretty good. There's other people out there that draw better or draw different, so there's a lot of different pathways you can kind of go to. If this is the one that you're looking for, I would say that that the easiest way to get there is to be consistent. So you need to apply consistent pressure over time. I don't think that honestly you're gonna get much done just by like floating around to like 10 different mediums and 12 different kinds of paper and this and that. Just pick a set of variables and work on them. And over time, you're gonna get a deeper and deeper knowledge of like how those work. And that's what I did is I just worked in this thing for a really long time and I didn't switch up the variables very much. It was always charcoal or graphite drawing more or less. It was always oil painting more or less. For those of you that followed me for a long time, like I've played around with watercolor and things and gouache and other stuff, but you always kind of come back to oil paint, I feel. So just pick a set of variables and invest your time in them. Pick a set of concepts, invest your time in understanding them, and then a lot of great stuff can happen from doing that. Bipin Shrestha is asking, what are your thoughts on Russian approach to drawing? What do you recommend for beginners who don't have a mentor? Russian approach to drawing or Barg? Well, I mean, if you have an affinity for one or the other, then I think you kind of like have to pick your spots. I don't think one is better or worse than the other, but you just got to look at the outcomes. Like, what artists do you like? Like who are the artists in museums that you look at and you go like, wow, that one just, it just feels like it changes my life every time I see it. And then trace back, well, how did that artist study, right? Like, were they trained, in a structural method? Were they trained in a more visual method, like kind of French European or like, just you got to do some detective work, I think, if you want to get like a good answer to that question, because the only one I can give is like, it depends. It depends upon the look eventually that you're going for, right? If you love like animation and you love like Glenn Vilppu's work, well, don't study Bard. Like that's the complete opposite. of what you'd want to do to get to that place, right? So, like, if you love the work of like 19th century French academics, then guess what? Studying Glenn Villepeu's not going to be the way to get there. So it's a little bit of like a buyer beware. You gotta educate yourself a bit, I think, about what the pros and cons of each are, but also, like understand that where you want to be. Like, just speaking from my own experience, I was trained one way, but I realized that, like, I think training any one way, you're only getting like half the story. So I really invested a lot in learning a more structural approach, and I worked for years and years and years to kind of improve my drawing and my painting, from what I felt like were the weak spots in it, which in general was like kind of structure and form, because where I trained it was very much flat visual shapes, and how you could use that to kind of create a picture, which is, like I said, it's really just one way to do it, and it would be very naive to think that one way was like the whole story. That sounds harsh. I don't mean it, but whatever. Like, you got to round out the answers to that question. Victor Adolfo is asking, how important is it to put yourself out there with your work versus just sharing your work on social networks? Does it help to build a following? Yeah, I think it does. I mean, if the thing is, like, if you're going to be a professional, I guess, it's about like what your outcome is. But I think nowadays, the game is played on social media. I mean, galleries make hay on social media. I think every gallery that's out there is like trying to build a following as well, because it's so ubiquitous, like in terms of like how people connect. To the extent that even, I think there's a particular report, I forget the name of it, but there's like a study, like kind of a yearly study, I think, done on like online art sales and things. And I heard about this. I was talking with somebody that worked at Christie's auction house. I forget the name of the study. But anyway, point is, they're kind of looking at like online art sales, and like statistically what's going on with online art sales. But like primarily, like all online art sales, 95 or 98% of them or something were under 4,000, or 4,000 and under, right? And so I think like a lot of probably like sales at galleries are within that number. So they're kind of thinking, well, we can do pretty well, like also like by working online instead of just working like in-person stuff. But this isn't like, necessarily like blue chip, like real blue chip galleries. I mean, I'm not sure how much of their work they do online versus, I mean, but they're working on another level. It's about like investment, and there's different kind of considerations than purchases like under that certain level. Sorry, I kind of got lost in the question. But yeah, building a following, like, is a good, yeah, like that's how you're gonna get in touch with people, is through that following. And like I said earlier, not everybody winds up taking the gallery route, or that isn't the only like viable way to have an art career. Yeah, so that's that. Valerie says, I say all the time I'm interested in portraiture, so why is it people or people making general comments on Facebook always say, do you do pets? Don't know, Val. That's pet people for you. Somebody whose name is in Cyrillic that I can't pronounce, but she says, yeah, my name is Kochali and I live in Kazakhstan. Has drawing speed increased over the years? To paint a good portrait, I need to spend 10 hours on A4 paper. Yeah, that's about how long it takes me. Saturn M is asking, hi Stephen, what are your thoughts on improving past works at a point when one has developed further skill? Yeah, I think, you just do your best and you let it go. I mean, that's I think the best advice I can give about that is, because going back and trying to like revisit like an old work, I've always had like a lot of trouble with that, because it's like almost like you're a bit of like a different person back then. You were like making different choices, you're probably working with different materials. Like there was just so much about it that puts you at like a disadvantage. I think you'd be better off just like simply trying to like do a new, make a new artwork at that point, or you can kind of redo the same idea, you know. Like I can remember a couple times where there were like paintings that I had tried to make once and did not succeed. Um, and then later on, you know, I kind of revisited the idea, but not the canvas. I've almost never had that experience that like opening up an old canvas was like a good idea. It usually ends in unhappiness. Emmanuel Aliu is saying, I'm 16-year-old aspiring to be a comic book artist. Um, do you feel it would be appropriate to use the art of the aesthetic like yours in fictional settings, or would it be disorienting? Well, I think it would be probably too labor intensive, frankly. Like, you know, I think that, you know, you're thinking about a graphic novel, you're talking about pages and pages and pages and pages of drawing. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess like if you had a lot of time in your hands, you could probably try and do it. But I just think that there's probably more efficient ways to go about that. And at 16, you know, I'm sure that you know you got a lot of studying ahead of you to get ahead in that field. So yeah, I just don't know. I mean, maybe I just don't have the experience to really say whether that would be good or not. It's not something I'm necessarily all that familiar with. Raul Rai says, "Do you have any thoughts on finishing the work, or how do we approach the final stage?" By the final stage, you should have probably done most of what the work needs to be finished. You know, at this point in the drawing, what I'm doing is kind of going through and I'm kind of nitpicking myself, going, is there enough unity there? Is the value that I used in that shape a good one? Is that edge prominent enough? You know, I think that, you know, finishing probably gets a lot of conversation about it, but it's almost like halfway through the drawing, you probably have gotten to the extent to which like that drawing will be like successful or not, and then finishing is a matter of like not messing that up. Like, you know, because like in a good drawing you're kind of like capturing this vision of this moment, and then you're kind of polishing that moment until you know it looks as grand as you want it to look. But if you never like captured that moment, right? If you never captured the light, or you never captured the design, like the shapes and things, you know, no amount of like rendering or whatever is really gonna like create, I think, the artwork that you were trying to create. Um, so I would say like, you know, if you're having challenges or looking for good concepts about finishing work, I think that it's really, you know, still something that is probably most effectively studied, you know, in that middle stage. I mean, I could give you the basic advice and say it's about like sharp pencils and even values, you know, and general things like probably at the time that you're finishing, you're going to be using your stump a lot less in a drawing. Um, but beyond that, like I said, I think the answer lies a little bit elsewhere. Chris N is saying, any thoughts on the Watts Atelier? Seems similar but more focused on quick sketch. Yeah, you know, whenever you're kind of thinking about like different schools and so on, I think that probably the best way is just to look at the work that comes out of it. You know, like if you look at the kind of work that I make, you know, and consider like what I do to get there, you know, I make like eventually highly finished work, and so it takes a long time, and so the ideas that I focus on are not about like making the drawing look good after 5 minutes. Like after 5 minutes, my drawing looks still really rough. Like if you watched some of the early live streams of this, like it looks really rough. But that's because like I don't really care how it looks after 5 minutes. I want to know how it looks after like, you know, 10 hours. Whereas like Watts Atelier, again, their strategies are going to be about like how do you like. I mean, I imagine, I don't know exactly, but I imagine a lot of them are going to be about like how do you just lay it in, you know, aesthetically right in the first place, like a lot, how do you get there a lot faster, so it is like what happens in the first 15 minutes of your drawing is probably pretty critical and pretty different from what I would do. But again, like, it's just buyer beware, like if you're gonna study to be an artist, you got to figure out like what kind of art that you want to make, and I think that can be tough also. Just because, like, when you're starting out, you kind of don't know what you don't know. I mean, that's probably the if there was one thing that is like super hard as a student, it's getting to know what you don't know. Because I can remember so many times, and there was somebody like earlier on this stream. I was asking like, so how do I draw? Like, how do we get good at drawing in like 2 or 3 months? And it's, like, with all sympathy completely with the question, it's just that I don't think that you really do get good that fast. But it's easy to consider that when you're just kind of getting into it. I mean, I remember thinking, at the academy, and you hear this over and over and over again from so many different people. Um, oh yeah, I'm gonna do like a year at the academy, and then once I've figured out this whole realism thing, then I'm just gonna like go like make art, and really like pursue my passion. And here I am, like whatever, 15 years later, and I'm thinking like, oh man, there's still so much I can learn and improve. So, um, yeah, like, again, just returning to the question, I think Watts is, obviously they got a lot of great like educational material, and if you're looking to make work that is like that, then that's obviously the place to be. Uh, but just check out where you think you want to be. Let's see. MJ is asking, when you mean by keeping the light shape unified, do you mean to compress the value variation inside those planes and keep them separate from the dark halftones and shadows? No, no, it was more shadow shape, light shape. Like, so, really anything in the lights, it would just extract the halftone from it, leave it flat. Four Chins is asking, hi Stephen, what's your process like when implementing color into your graphite drawings? I think I answered that earlier, actually. Saturn M is asking, hi Stephen, will you be doing a master copy of Sargent's Madam X? What do you think about that painting? Yeah, yeah, man, I really do want to, actually. I was talking to my wife about this the other day, and I was like, I totally want to do that. I want to do like a full length master copy. Now, a couple of things have to happen to do that. Like right now, my studio situation is a little bit crazy. So I don't actually have the capacity to do like much larger projects. But definitely like a Madam X study is so on the list. As well as, like, by the way, some other like figure drawing stuff also. Like once I have a little bit more kind of room to breathe, which I just don't have right now. Leonie Knowles says you could also paint with pan pastels. That is very true. Let's see here. So I'm just scrolling to find the questions. A lot of questions come in, and then I have to scroll back up to them. Raymar, Phyllis Riley says Raymar only offers the panels right now with Fabriano paper. Anything on Fabriano? Yeah, well, so when I started working with Raymar, I just asked them like, oh, by the way, like I see that you do panels with paper, but I only use Stonehenge, and so like if we were going to do something together, like I would have to, I'm not going to like switch to Raymar just to work with you guys. Like it would have to be, they came back to me saying, oh yeah, like totally, we've worked with the people from Legion before with Stonehenge, and so they actually had some already made that they sent to me. So it's just not commercially available yet, but it's going to be very soon. And I actually wanted to like kind of do a live stream to like celebrate that fact. But I guess I just have to keep waiting on them to start manufacturing it. But I got to tell you, like so far, it's absolutely my favorite drawing surface, and believe me when I say I've gone through a lot of them. The Fabriano, I think the last time I used Fabriano was like maybe back in Florence, so many many years ago, and I just don't recall like being like really impressed by it. It kind of my recollection has a kind of a texture that I didn't really like. But also the fact that I think what you might be referring to that Raymar has is a hot press watercolor paper, which I actually think is a little bit too smooth for most of the drawing that I do. So it's kind of another reason why I wouldn't use it. Stonehenge still has like a little bit of like tooth to it. Candle is saying, I didn't know that Subway had a night shift. Well, it wasn't so much like a night shift, like we were open 24 hours, but I used to work at this one Subway on Reed Street in Palatka, Florida. And they were open till about 2 a.m. So I'd get out of school at like probably 4 or something. I'd get to work at, I think the shift would start at like 6. And then I'd work till about 2 and I'd take a taxi home, which like cost me an hour's wage, which is like, so sad. But that was life back then, and it was a horrible horrible job. But you know you got to do what you got to do to get through school, right? Let's see. Romer Dubost asked if I ever taught at the Art Students League in New York. No, I never did. Um, a lot of my friends, like Eddie Rochat, I think actually Eddie still teaches there. But you know, it's another place to teach. From what I understand, it's a pretty hectic gig. Like the classes are like there's just like so many people in them, and you kind of get very little time with your instructor. But obviously, like because it's New York, there's a lot of really cool artists kind of teach there. Um, if I'm totally honest, and I haven't, I mean, if you study there, let me know. Because I never studied there. I just know about it from like people that work there or like people that have studied there. Um, but like I've heard it's like super hectic. Like I've heard it's like a really tough place to study actually. But if there's some different opinion about that, just let me know because I'm kind of curious to know. Let's see. So Nikki Swanson's asking, I was fortunate to receive a scholarship to Florence Lorenzo de Medici Art Academy in 2000. Do you know Claire Rose? No, I didn't go to the Lorenzo de Medici Art Academy. I went to the Florence Academy of Art, which is one of the smaller atelier schools there. Or well, it's big for Florence, but it's a small school in general. Sarub Gurung is asking, can you tell us about your daily routine? Like how much time do you give to your artworks? I just kind of give as much as I can. You know, it's since starting to run like Patreon and stuff. You know, it kind of really grew into quite a job. So I have like a lot of admin work, like a lot of development of videos. You know, a lot of development of like website features, like all the stuff that happens on Patreon. Like I know, like in the end what it looks like is just like, oh, there's a whole bunch of cool stuff here, but like for all the cool stuff, it's like obviously there's so much work that goes into the back end of it, and I'm not like crying about it. Like I'm very happy to do the work, and I'm very happy for that to be my job, but it does take up obviously a lot of time. So I do give quite a bit of time to Patreon, but you know, I mean, it's again, it's a thing that is probably primarily responsible for me like having the ability to even live in Norway because otherwise there's not like much, you know, there's not like much for an artist like me to do in a small town in Norway. So working remotely through Patreon is has enabled that, which is really I'm really grateful for. You know, every day that I'm doing it is fantastic. Uh, but I give as much as I can, so it's hard to say. Like I don't really keep a schedule about it, but it's like whenever I have time, you know, I just jump in front of my easel. You know, the good thing is like my life is dedicated to it, so it's like I can, you know, I just have all my work stuff ready. So whenever I have a moment, it's not like I have to like set up a whole bunch of stuff and like clear through a bunch of like barriers to kind of just get into work. Which is probably the best advice I could give anybody who's looking to like, you know, try to create a good environment for them to work in is like just try to remove the barriers of entry, right? Like you want to just be able to just jump in and get to work as fast as possible at any time. And whatever stands in the way of that, that's the thing that you gotta like remove. So for me, for instance, it's like like having all the my stuff. Like if I had to like put my stuff away in a bin or a closet or something, I mean, I would never get anything done. Like I just need to have my work like always like out and available to like look at. But anyway, that's too much of a digression. Let's see. Ricky is asking, how would you define a master in painting and drawing? Well, how would I define a master? I don't know that I've ever even like thought to answer that question. How would I define a master? Uh, I don't know, Ricky. That's too tough of a question. It's too broad. I can't answer it actually. Tech Snail is asking, hey Stephen, love the Patreon. When using a dark background in graphite, do you spray fix the background before working on the portrait or leave it as it is? Any reasons not to? Yeah, I wouldn't spray fix anything until the end. I'm aware that there's like something that exists that's called like workable fixative, but I don't have any experience with it, so I can't really can't make any recommendation based on like do or don't use it. If you have used workable fixative, just tell me in the comments like what you thought of it, because I'd even like to know. I don't necessarily have like a call for it. Like I like to be able to like maneuver around and like change my background values and really change everything in the drawing if I need to. So to me, it would be like I think kind of a bad idea almost to use workable fixative. But let me know what you think if you have some experience with it. Saturn M is asking, do you have any quick sketching outdoors of people or environments? I'm so much of like a studio painter. Like most of, just everything I do is like in the studio. There are some rare occasions when I go out to like do plein air painting, but I kind of like, I think I'm like kind of like a hobbyist. Like I'm a Sunday painter, for plein air. So I just go out and I try some stuff. I try to have some fun and try and make a decent painting and enjoy a bit of a fresh air. But otherwise, like when I'm doing proper work, I've always been like a studio painter. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Trick the artist, or Trishy something the artist, Tracy the artist says, do you prefer easel drawing, surface upright or angled? Do you prefer standing or sitting? I prefer sitting, and I always work vertical. Yeah. Sophie Taylor said, I don't really enjoy art, but this is amazing. So, Sophie, you might actually not be telling the truth there, because if you're enjoying this, then you might actually enjoy art. But that's another conversation. Um, MJ says, any advice on arranging groups of value? Is it all about unified planes and having the smaller forms subordinate by the large simple plane? Yeah, I think that pretty much encapsulates it. But what you're experiencing, MJ, I think is something that's probably quite natural to people like studying drawing and painting, and it is that like you can become familiar with the idea, but really the understanding of the idea, and this is like to all you art students out there that are out there like studying with other instructors and things, and you're working with them, and they come up and they give you some advice on your work, right? Like this used to happen all the time at the academy, is why I bring this up, right? So you go up to a student and you go like, all right, so if you think about like kind of organizing your values in terms of planes, like a mosaic of value, and yada yada yada, and you go on and you explain this thing, and then students, not all the time, but sometimes, will have this habit of doing this. And I say this is not like condemning anyone, because I think I probably did this as a student as well. Is like, because you understand like intellectually the idea, like I understand that you should unify planes of value, it does not mean that actually you understand practically how to get that done. And so what your instructor is probably doing there is bringing it up, not for no reason, but because it doesn't look like in your work you are yet able to express a practical understanding of that concept. So MJ, like in your case, like I said, I think that there's not really anything wrong with the phrasing or your kind of understanding of the idea as such. I think it's very much a matter of like figuring out exactly how to kind of put that into practice, and that's like the pencil on the paper kind of understanding that for all that teachers can do, uh, we can't yet imbue that. It's that Neo from the Matrix type download of information, where like now he understands karate or whatever. We haven't reached that place yet with art education, unfortunately. So I just got to get this little halftone. Yeah, I'm gonna get to the next question. Let's see. Clem is saying, I love animation, but I love two works geared towards academic like yours. What should I study? Focus at one time. Yeah, I mean those two things, they're a little bit not like maybe opposed to each other would be to like too strong, but they're kind of coming from slightly different places, So it's I think it would be a challenge to maybe answer to those two things at the same time, because like academic work like this, the one thing that it needs, the one thing that it kind of can't do without is just time. It takes a long time to like execute a work like this. And I'm saying that after years and years of doing it, still it takes me a lot of time to make work. Um, Whereas like animation, I think going into that also professionally, the turnover, the expectation of production is going to be like way higher than what it is with kind of traditional drawing and painting like this. But I mean, hey, everybody, everybody goes into something needing to figure out how to make it work. I'm sure that there's some kind of confluence in between those two styles. El Ensayista is asking, what kind of paper do you recommend for portraiture? I use Stonehenge paper, always. Four Chins is asking, was it hard for you to tell your family that you wanted to drop out of art college to pursue traditional art education in Europe? Um, Interesting question. No, no, because well, part of it too is that I guess, well, I guess this is a personal question, but I'm not like really, really um, like amazingly tight with or at least especially at that time, I was not very close with a lot of my family. So I was a bit of I was just kind of trying to figure it all out, mostly on my own. And to their credit, like I think whenever whenever we did talk about things, they were always really supportive about stuff. So no, I didn't have that particular difficulty. I know that for some people that's like really hard, but like I mean, and I don't want to like go into people's personal business and say like, oh, you should do this, you should do that, because I just don't want that responsibility. It's like a huge thing, but I mean, if you're gonna chase after this stuff, there is no guarantee that you're gonna make a living. But I know that, like other people that I know, wanted to try the safe way, and eventually, the safe way, like it seems like it's safe, but really, is anything safe? Like, is anything actually safe? I mean, working for a company, even like I did for years, working for a company is still no guarantee that you're gonna be just fine. So anyway, I say, I believe in kind of betting on yourself, but that's just my opinion. Let's see. Blue Awu says, "Hey Stephen, was this drawn entirely with a mechanical HB pencil?" No, I mean there's a lot of different pencils in the yeah in the well, I'll show you. Like mostly like all this stuff was used at some point or other during the making of this drawing. Let's see. Oh no, a bunch of comments just scrolled by. Frederick Letter Blair says, I'd like to ask, and have you ever drawn on canvas? I want to do some large portraits, but it's hard to get really big paper, so I tried canvas. Simply awful process. I would say just go with large paper. I mean, at that point, you do have to like search for it, but you can get watercolor paper at enormous sizes if need be. Even like Canson paper sells rolls of paper. I think Stonehenge, maybe they used to, but I don't know if they do anymore actually sell rolls of paper. But also, like, I know, I mean, depending on how big you want to go, I think probably, if I was going to like do a really large project, I'll tell you what. Probably I would be trying to get a company like Raymar to actually do something custom for me. Because when you think about like artwork, I know it seems like an investment to like pay for really good supplies. But like if you make a really big drawing and you make a really big great drawing, you're gonna want that thing to be like stable and safe. Because naturally paper is also already like more vulnerable, for instance, than canvas. I've never tried to do like a completed drawing on canvas, so I can't really speak to that. But like I said, like the solution that I'm working on right now is probably the place that I would try to get to, if that's at all possible. I mean, like I said, I know everybody's got a budget, but just like in optimal circumstances, working on stable materials, and really that's the catch, is that like, let's say you make a great drawing, well, what are you going to do with it afterwards, right? Like a giant piece of paper is really really vulnerable to any number of different like kind of tragic outcomes. So you're gonna want to be able to like protect and preserve what you made. Yeah. Let's see. Rabbit Yoru says, "Hey Stephen, do you have any tips on preserving HB drawings? Mine just get dusted away after a few days." I tend to use Spectrafix as a milk enzyme based fixative that usually does the trick for me. I mean, aside from that, obviously you just got to keep them in a safe place, probably get them framed as soon as possible. I did a big studio sale just recently, and I shipped about like 18 works out like around the world, to like New Zealand and California and wherever else. Um, and so far so good. They've all arrived safely, but it's always a gamble. So you just want to figure out good storage solutions to keep them safe. Some funny comments here. Uh, Jivan Aji is asking, I heard the drawing with a grid will destroy your ability. Is that true? What do you think? You know, I think that any kind of drawing that you want to do, I mean, it just depends upon like, again, like what your goals are. And I don't like a broken record saying this, but I'm not the only one saying this either. Like if you read Loomis's book on like head and hands, what he's gonna say to you is like, well, if you just want to like learn how to draw a head, like I'm drawing right now, yeah, like you can't do that on a grid. Like a grid's not gonna produce like the same set of like aesthetic concepts that I'm using here. A grid's great if you want to do like photorealist work or hyperrealist work. I would say that doing that without a grid would be like really difficult. Um, so if you want to make that kind of work, why would anybody say a grid would be bad? No, like, however, if you want to learn to like sketch really well, will a grid destroy it? I mean, it's just such a harsh, like, strange evaluation. Like, it'll destroy your. I mean, I don't know. I don't really think it'll destroy anything. Just because I think that just sounds like too dramatic. I think that it will maybe impede your learning in terms of like the concepts necessary to learn to do a good sketch. But like grids are so old. Like there's like Albrecht Dürer like woodcuts of like artists using grids and like demonstrating like how artists would use like grids in life drawing. So like no, I think probably there's enough examples of artists using that I think you're probably just fine. All right, there's a lot of questions rolling around. I'm not sure actually. I don't really have all the time in the world, unfortunately, today. So I don't think I'm definitely not going to get to all of them, but uh, yeah, George is asking if you're seeing the drawing at an angle. Yeah, of course. Like that is the paper like flat to my field of view, so it's kind of you're looking at it like down an angle like this. PS Light is saying, "Hey Stephen, do you believe in the phrase do enough starts and the finishes take care of themselves?" Unfortunately, yes. I mean, I would love to say that there's, and I was actually just talking about this earlier in the stream. What you've said there is a little bit more of a succinct version of the answer that I was giving, actually, which was just, you know, the concepts at the finish really should be kind of like almost taking care of themselves, and it's that middle period where if your finishes aren't coming off, it's usually something in that middle period that's kind of going wrong, rather than like some truly like finishing concept that you're kind of missing. I mean, finishing eventually. Like what I'm doing right now, like just kind of filling in some of the holes of these transitions. I mean, that's a lot of what you do when finishing. It's like a little bit more mechanical. Um, that frustrated me a lot. I remember someone said something like that to me early on when I was studying, and I just felt like, oh, well, like that's such a bummer because like I feel like I really can't finish stuff, like, and that's really a big problem for me, and I couldn't really see it as that. I couldn't see that actually no, like I was doing just fine. I just needed to have more like experience, in order to understand maybe like how to finish stuff. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of truth in that for sure. I mean, let's be fair though. Like you do need some technique, and there is some stuff about that. Antonio Saqueton is asking, when simplifying your values, how do you build it up to where it doesn't end up looking too dark or too light? Any tips to practice values? Uh, it's kind of a tough question. Like tips on practicing values, it's all about seeing values. Like, the execution of a value is one thing, but actually knowing where to put them, like, is a totally different thing. Like, so, like, my darkest darks are like here and here, right? And I know because of that, like, nothing in here should get as dark as those. Until I get to like the other kind of accented value areas, like in the lips here or under the nose here. So it's more like a knowledge of where the values go that I rely on more so than like uh yeah, like any, it's not like necessarily a technical thing that I do to like unify the values on a particular plane. It's just the knowledge that they should be kind of organized that way. Feshko Galulu is asking, do you think it's necessary to thoroughly study all the bones and muscles of the human body and memorizing them along with their names, or is it enough to just know of their existence? Uh, well, I talked to, actually, in that interview I did with Stan, somebody was mentioning earlier. I was kind of talking about this, and my feeling was that like if you're actually going into studying anatomy in depth, you'd actually have to purposely like not learn the names to not learn the names. You'd have to like focus on not learning them because all of the stuff that you're going to study is so intensively focused on giving you like all the names, like all the books that you're going to read, all the comprehensive how to's, they all have the names. So for me, when I was teaching anatomy, I thought that actually, and I prescribed to my students, learning the names is like a really big part of memorization, because what you want to do is you don't want to just like when you're looking at a face like this, like you want to be able to like call out everything that's happening in it. In terms of like your inner monologue, like when you're drawing, and you're kind of thinking about, oh, how does this connect to that? You want to be saying like, how does the levator labii like come off of the zygomatic bone and like come down to this muscular node? And like, having that language there, I think clarifies a lot of things for you. So I just think it's a cool asset. And if you're really into studying anatomy, like just roll with it. Like don't avoid it because it's hard. Because I don't think it really is hard. I think it's actually probably harder to study anatomy without that in terms of like really understanding it. Let's see. Victor Pierre is asking, do you have any advice about making your first sales? I feel like I could begin to sell some of my paintings, but I don't know where to start. Well, I mean, who's your, I mean, this is like more, this is like less art conversation and more just like sales, but like, who is your target? Like, who's your target demographic? Like, who are the people that appreciate your work? How do you get in touch with them? You know? Um, Again, this is why that kind of like building an audience thing just comes up over and over and over again. Because like, people I think aren't gonna like buy your work unless they know your work and they know like what you're trying to do and like what story you're trying to tell and like why it's cool at all. All these are things that you have to like kind of answer before someone's gonna like invest in your work. Like when you think about when you buy something, when you buy like a pair of shoes, like you want to know like, oh, where were these shoes made? Like were they, is it like were there ethical standards at the factories where these were made? Like, what kind of dyes are in them? Like plastics, rubbers. Like what is all this stuff? You want to know all these things about even the simplest item that you buy. Like, and art's not going to be any different than that. Like people want to know about it, especially by the way, they want to know about it because also like art is expensive. I mean, I'm talking about like a pair of shoes that cost like $100. You think about a painting that's going to cost 10 times that, or more, you know. So, excuse me, it's live broadcast. Um, so you got to start out with like kind of knowing what the story or the narrative of your work is, and then start with figuring out how to communicate that to people. Like what's the best way to show people that story and tell them, kind of take them on that journey. And I think when you talk about it like that, also there's another thing like with artists as well that we do, and I did this for years too. I mean, all the stuff I'm saying like condemning artists for doing is because I did it. Like I went through those things. But you go to this thing where you're like, oh well, sales seems like a dirty thing, and I don't want to get like like selling my, marketing my work. It sounds like all this like, ugh, it's so capitalist and whatever. But it's like eventually, right? You want to make money from your work because you want to keep making your work. And if you just think about marketing as storytelling, it's actually not that hard to make friends with. And I think I didn't really make as much like meaningful progress in like selling my work until I kind of recognized that core concept, right? It's really just storytelling. And people want to know like why it's cool. And you can tell them that. Like nobody knows better than you why your work is cool. And so you just find a way to, I think, communicate that, and like show that and tell that story and take them on that journey. And then I think the question isn't like, like how do I sell them my work? I think they're gonna want to buy your work, because they're invested in you already. They're invested in your story. They're invested in the kind of work or vision that you have. I think once people hit that point, um, that's when it's the work, that's selling itself in a way. Yeah. Miguel Volmer is asking, baby faces are young boys or girls? Are they harder to draw? I feel that they're harder. They're definitely different to draw. Harder, I'm not sure, but they're definitely different. Limo Art is asking, how do you clean your oil painting palette? I just use a bit of linseed oil, rub it off. Um, Remy Formont is asking, when you see a piece of art you find beautiful, do you ask yourself questions to dissect that feeling? I often can't pass this. It's beautiful. I love it, but I can't explain the why to it. That's a really cool question, and I would love to like really give that all of the due that it needs actually. But I think I'm kind of like drawing to the end of the stream, and I'm not sure that I can like answer all of the depth of that. Um, the basic part is that there is this moment, and if anybody like watches like all of my streams, just bring this up the next time. Ask me about like having a student's eye and like looking at work with a student's eye, and I'll go into some depth actually about like museum going experiences and art appreciating experiences and what happens when you're a student and you're kind of learning about visual language, and how that affects the way that you appreciate art, and how you also kind of mature through that process. It's a longer story, and I'm not going to have time to get to it here. But if you're here on the next stream, just remind me. And I think probably, yeah, there's a lot of questions. I have a schedule to keep, so I think I got to run. But just a couple of housekeeping things. Hey, remember the atelier tier is happening. The information is out on my Patreon, so if you want to check out that post on Patreon, you can find out all the information that you need to know about how it works, what you're going to learn, all that kind of thing. And it's starting on May 3rd. So just all you got to do really is be signed up by probably the end of this month, and you'll be kind of prepared with the right downloads and information and stuff. At the end of this video, eventually I'll put an end screen that has a link to my Patreon, so you can check it out there. Otherwise, listen, just thanks for watching, and please remember to like this video and subscribe. That way this video goes out to like more people, and I have more reasons even to do live streams. But listen, thanks so much for being here, everybody. Take care.